Greetings and welcome to a Saturday episode of Countdown to His Coming. If you watched my Wake Up in the Word broadcast yesterday, you can tell I must have really been anxious to get to today because I introduced it as Countdown to His Coming. But thanks for joining me today. We're here on this last Saturday of June 2025, and our world in America has been shaken by a primary, not even a main election, but a primary that was held in New York City this past week. And we're going to talk about the implications of that as we head toward a fall election season that could bring some real challenges we had not even expected. But we'll start today from the scripture, and the scripture from 2 Timothy chapter 3 talks about what kind of days we face in the last days. It begins with some very strong words from the Apostle Paul to the young preacher Timothy, where he says, if you look at the King James, know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. Perilous sounds pretty tough. Some English translations really weaken the strength of the Greek there. A couple of them, like the ESV, will use the term difficult. Difficult times will come. No, difficult is what I might experience trying to change a part on the engine of my Mustang, but I'll get through it. Oh, no. There's something far worse than difficult that's being expressed in the Greek here. And many translations do express that pretty well. Now, the Christian Standard Bible says, know this, hard times will come in the last days. Yeah, they will be hard times. But to really stress what the Greek means here, let me go to the Amplified. It says, but understand this, in the last days, dangerous times, and in parentheses it describes that, of great stress and trouble will come. Difficult days that will be hard to bear. Now, this is more in kin with what the meaning of the passage is really all about. I'll tell you what, I'll go to the NLT just to read you this first paragraph and share what we're facing, because some folks think, especially if you're like some of the Republican politicians that are strong Christians, that, hey, we just win a certain election and hey, we're done. We've made it. And the folks that depend on politics to straighten things out have missed the point, because without spiritual awakening, you can't keep winning at any ballot box. Well, what does it say in 2 Timothy 3? It says, you should know this, Timothy, that in the last days there will be very difficult times. For people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving and unforgiving. They will slander others and have no self-control. They will be cruel and hate what is good. They will betray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than God. They will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from people like that. Aren't you seeing this demonstrated in front of us on an almost daily basis? You don't have to look far. You don't have to go far in your news feed to see what's happening there. Well, what does this have to do with the mayoral primary that took place in New York City, and why does that even matter to us? I mean, we're not in New York. We're down here safe away from that mess in the Carolinas. But you have seen how things that start in major cities, like New York City especially, affect not only other people in our country, but people around the world. Think about what's at New York City. First of all, Wall Street, the business capital of our country and the world, some would say. The United Nations itself, where all kinds of crazy people come in expressing their often wicked views and are able to use the stage of the UN to promote things that you and I would call heinous crimes. As we get to what happens on the streets of New York City, it of course was really pointed out during the immigration crisis just how bad it could get, as illegals from all over the world were being put up in luxury hotels in New York City. And finally, Mayor Eric Adams had enough of that and said, no, we're done with this. and made the mistake of criticizing the Biden administration. And then all of a sudden, so all kinds of corruption charges are getting thrown at him. The Biden Department of Justice decided to prosecute him. All that's gone away now, but I tell you what, you were stepping in the wrong direction, fighting against your own Democratic Party. And now Eric Adams is an independent who, yes, is running for re-election in New York City. But it just shows you where the culture is there and how you don't fight it, because they will even make up all kinds of charges, even try to prosecute the then candidate, Donald Trump, who's now president of the United States. Friends, New York City does not live on an island to itself. What it does affects our entire country and our world. And you need to look at this closely, because last week, to the surprise of many, the Democratic primary was won by Zohran Mamdani. Now, he's not just a Democrat, he's a democratic socialist. He was supported by AOC and Bernie Sanders, and his views are so radical that you would think they would be dismissed offhand, except that the mostly young, enthusiastic voting bloc that went with him and a very privileged white elite and mostly female voting bloc that went with him seems to be clueless about the things that matter, seems to have been educated into some kind of nihilism that has no connection with reality in the world, and they voted for him en masse. By winning the Democratic primary, you have to say that he's got the inside track to win the election in the fall. Why is that? Because over 60% of all voters in New York City are registered Democrats, and sometimes those folks just automatically punch a one-party ticket as their way to vote at any given time, not paying a whole lot of attention to who they might be voting for. About 21% of voters in New York City are independent, and a tiny little fraction, less than 15%, are Republicans. So putting a Republican candidate on the ballot means you've got to get half of Democratic voters to vote for you to have a chance to win. So what could be happening in New York City? Who knows? Now, the candidate the Democrats thought they could insert and he would automatically win was formerly disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo, whose comeback was supposed to be this mayor's race. Cuomo not only lost, he lost by a significant margin, and now is talking about leaving his name on the ballot because, hey, he's put together this brand new party himself that he thinks is going to make some kind of difference. And, you know, New York City's in such a mess. Before we talk about what this candidate believes, think about how bad it has gotten and the response of New Yorkers. For a couple of decades now, at the height of everything going on in New York City, are far left candidates winning elections and far leftist principles being put into action, and it's completely ruined the city. It's unlivable. It's caused a lot of the problems that people are complaining about today. Not being able to earn a living wage, not being able to afford a house, can't even afford rent, and all the problems that are going with the leftist policies that have ruined New York City over this time. So what's been the response of the populace? Well, let's just move farther to the left. How far would they go if they elect Zohran Mamdani? Oh my goodness. I'll just point you to a couple of folks you can look at some good articles about. I'll focus on one this morning. Two Liz's. Liz Wheeler, if you ever follow her, had a great spot online about Zohran Mamdani and why he ended up getting such a huge number of votes. And then Liz Peek, who had a great editorial that Fox put out to describe what he is all about. And if you don't understand how dangerous this is, just listen closely. It's more than just, I want to establish city-run grocery stores. It's way more than that, friends. It's a dangerous set of values that he's promoting to say things like, oh, look, we don't care if the country has said all this gender confusion and what we call gender affirming care that's really an assault on children, that you would somehow begin to mutilate children's bodies before they're even old enough to get a learner's permit to drive. But that he would put $65 million toward that kind of care in response in New York City. Make it the place where you can come and have that happen with your children, and we're going to be all for it. Really? Well, who is Zohran Mamdani? This Democrat that is now going to be on the ballot for mayor of New York in the fall believes first and foremost in the global intifada. Who would do that? Well, someone who is, as Mamdani is, an avowed Muslim, who is not just a Muslim, but a very radical leftist one who also embraces Marxism. Put those two combinations together and you have one of the most dangerous characters ever to run for political office in the United States with a chance of actually winning. Sometimes you get these characters on ballots, but they may not get 2% of the vote. Well, this guy's figured out what it takes to make the difference, what it takes for him to be able to secure many votes by looking at all the perils that Democrats have caused in New York City and saying that he can just correct all of them. Making promises that are impossible to keep and setting a precedent for what might happen to the Jewish community that is out of this world. Because his anti-Semitism, I started to say his anti-Semitic policies, he can't put most of this into work now, but his anti-Semitism is so far to the left that the Jewish community in New York City should genuinely be afraid. Now, who is this guy? He's only 33 years of age. He was an assemblyman in New York who's only been a citizen of the United States for about 7 years. His parents moved here because his dad, guess what, is a professor at Columbia University. Yeah, these are the kind of professors that Ivy League schools have been putting on for some time now. And if you want to know the bottom line as to where all this is going, all you have to do is look at the education system that's putting out these people whose minds are so twisted that they might think that this is an answer. Well, listen to what Liz Peek says in her article. She said, New Yorkers awakened Wednesday to a grim reality. Zohran Mamdani, who just won the Democratic primary, could become mayor of our nation's greatest city in November. Why is that grim? Because this upstart 33-year-old from Uganda is an avowed socialist who's promising free childcare, free bus transportation, rent freezes, city-run grocery stores, and other unworkable policies. Impossible policies, my friends, of the sort that drove Venezuela, Argentina, and other one-time great nations into financial ruin. And he's also a proud backer of the Intifada, and he's an unrepentant anti-Semite. Wow. Well, why would anybody vote for a character like this? He says, she goes on to say, college-educated young people especially think Mamdani's program is wonderful. Just don't ask them who will pay for it. Even my staunchy anti-Trump Democratic friends, she writes, are outraged. My Jewish friends even more so. They cannot imagine how their party has lurched so far left. But they did nothing to stop it. Most do not engage in local politics. Most have no idea who represents them on the city council or in the state legislature, or even when the local elections take place. Ask them. You'll be shocked. Now, folks, this is one lesson that you must learn. We all seem to take for granted that we may have good people running our systems of government. That's not going to be true unless good people get involved and make sure that good people not only run, but get elected. If you don't, the default measure is that the kooks can be in control. Well, there's no place where this has been more evident than in New York City itself. Listen to what she says as she goes on and writes about this situation. She said, the shocking win by Zohran and defeat of former Governor Andrew Cuomo, a scandal-plagued candidate who ran a miserable campaign, has many authors. Jews failed to organize their community to rally around Cuomo, whose early lead proved deceptive and evaporated just weeks before the primary. Jews were not paying attention to the young anti-Zionist Muslim who advocates for globalizing the Intifada, does not recognize Israel's right to exist, and has even threatened to arrest Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu if he sets foot in the Big Apple. Can you imagine what it would be like if Bibi decided to come speak at the United Nations for something, and this guy's the mayor of New York City and fulfills his promise, sends the police, NYPD, just head on out to the airport. As soon as Bibi sets foot on New York soil, I want you to arrest him. We're going to extradite him back to Europe for some world court summons that they've got him down for, because, of course, the radicals run that world court as well. Really? This is what we're heading for? She said mostly, though, Mondami's upset victory can be traced to the subversion of our education system. Now, Liz Wheeler pointed this out in great detail in her video this week. Our education system has infused generation after generation of gullible young people to indoctrinate them with leftist claptrap, teaching them that capitalism is evil and exploitive and that socialism is the better path. They've never been taught the history of what Marxism has always done when it took over nations. How many millions have suffered and died at the hands of these dictators that would decide to put into practice the principles of Karl Marx. Well, she goes on to write, the liberal elites who lead and fund our academic institutions have for decades cheered on the progressive professors who convinced America's youth that our country is systematically racist, that social justice demands the toppling of our economy. Now, they've allowed achievement and meritocracy to be maligned as watchwords for white supremacy rather than America's core values that allow everyone to get ahead. While there are other possible voices out there, it seems like none of them are being heard by this generation. Where were their voices as Martin Luther King's equality dream was junked from curricula, even as is being done in California now, and instead you're exchanging it for these DEI programs, virtue signaling, the idea that leftist candidates now are going to assuage their white liberal guilt. Did anybody see the end game here? Well, apparently not. She goes on to write that proud Ivy League alums sent checks to their alma maters year after year, hoping to vault their offspring into those hallowed halls, ignoring what their kids were learning. When the Crimson reported that, listen to this closely, this is from Harvard University, reported that 82% of Harvard's faculty self-identified as liberal or very liberal, and less than 2% conservative. Were these alumni in any way concerned that their kids might hear only one side of the story? Did they know that Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto was one of the most frequently assigned texts in our colleges? Does this make sense? What happens if you educate a generation with this? Well, we're seeing it right now. She goes on to write that Americans have ignored for decades the leftward drift of our schools and the decline in scholastic standards. Both are contributing to the creation of a generation truly ignorant of how the economy works, the history of failed socialist regimes, and the founding enduring principles of the United States. And here's what must happen now. New Yorkers of all sorts must coalesce around one candidate, either Andrew Cuomo or Eric Adams, both of whom are likely to run as independents. They should be convinced to, at least, should be convinced to bow out of the race, as well as Curtis Sliwa. He's the Republican candidate, Guardian Angels founder who lost the race back in 2021. As Cuomo said after the primary, there are about 5 million voters in New York City. There are about 8 million people in New York City, and about 1 million people vote in the Democratic primary. So it's not necessarily representative of the city at large. He's right. Mamdani could lose in November, but if people will pay attention and get out and vote. The right-leaning Chicago Tribune recently ran an editorial titled, "New Yorkers Take It from Chicago. We've seen this movie before and the ending isn't pretty." Most of Mondami's ideas are something that's being demonstrated by the wicked leftist Chicago mayor today. And oh friends, it's not pretty. It's ugly. It's why Chicago is in shambles to this day. Could the same thing happen to New York City? It could. And how would that affect you? I want you to think about this. Think about what would happen if this kind of mayor is in New York City to the Christians and Jews of that city whose viewpoints are so far apart from the mayor's that they will become the new targets of persecution. Is that possible? Well, we've seen it already happen in our country. But this could be the same medicine but on steroids, okay? Much more powerful. Now, of course, there's some folks that are saying, oh, this is not going to matter. This guy won't get elected. Fox Business's Larry Kudlow believes that winning the primary is going to be the high water mark for Mamdani. He thinks that voters learn more about him and they discover his dangerous policies, they'll reject him. It's notable that Google searches in New York for socialism soared after the vote. People, and especially young people, do not even seem to know what the term means. But my friends, is that ignorance going to persist? And instead, will some of these young voters who just see in their eyes the promises of free bus rides and frozen rent and new grocery stores that they think are going to give them cheaper groceries as it runs the other legitimate businesses out of town, do they really get all of that in their mind and think that, hey, wow, look at all these promises he's making? And do they really think that could happen? You know, some people can be deceived into voting for some of the most wicked candidates ever. It's happened all around the world, and it will continue to happen as long as the deceiver is at work. Yes, friends, we're living in perilous, dangerous times. And for those in New York City, we need to pray for those folks, but pray for all of us, because if this character gets elected as mayor in the fall, it will trickle through our entire system in the United States and be once again a source of not only danger for the policies of folks that might be on the wrong side of all of these issues, but it will ramp up all of the dangerous opportunities for terror organizations like Hamas to gain an even stronger foothold in America. You say, why would you think this guy's got anything to do with Hamas? Because listen, who funded his campaign? One group is CARE, that Islamic organization that Beck says should be designated a terror organization. How about faculty members that endorsed Hamas at Columbia gave thousands of dollars to his candidacy? You're going to continue to support him into the fall. Friends, it's very possible that we could have someone who's an open supporter of terrorism as mayor of New York City in the fall if we don't allow our people to understand what's going on and encourage. If you got friends in New York City, talk to them. Encourage them to get out and vote and learn what's going on in their own city so that this great American, it's the bellwether. It's the place where our nation was founded almost. This great place where our first president was inaugurated, it could become a very center focal point of world terrorism if this guy gets elected mayor. I kid you not. So friends, you might think I'm exaggerating about how bad it could be. Just wait and see, my friends. But hopefully we won't have to experience that if people will recognize that just because it's dangerous times in the last days doesn't mean we don't have a responsibility to try to do something about every one of these issues when they pop up. So friends, all our prayers today for New York City right through the election this fall, that anybody, any one of these candidates instead of Mamdani will be better for New York City than he would. Well, that's all for today, my friends. You worship with God's people somewhere tomorrow. We're looking forward to being with our friends at Columbus Baptist Church in the morning, where Jamie Johnson will be speaking, and we'll be spending a little bit of time with this good old friend of ours in Crossfire Ministries. Hey, you have a great day in the Lord. I'll see you again on Monday when we wake up in God's Word.